guys. Welcome to Thursday's assignment. This assignment is due Friday at 11:59. It shouldn't take you very long because it's not a lot to do. It's just kind of wordy. So this video is to kind of explain what double consciousness is, to read the text to you aloud, such and so on. So our goals for today are you're going to analyze scenes from the novel in writing, and you're going to compare TV and film to novels. So we're going to watch a YouTube clip and a clip from a scene in a movie, and we're going to talk about how double consciousness plays out in that. So the first thing you need to do is complete the do now on the next slide, and then we'll complete the double consciousness worksheet. So the do now for today is, in what ways does Jin change himself in his chapter? Why does he do this? So we see the changes start when he moves to his new school. So you can talk about something to do with his food. You can talk about how he treats Wei Chen and how he speaks to him. And yeah, those would be good ways of doing that. So answer this, pause the video if you need to. I'm going to move forward into the worksheet. Okay, so double consciousness. You should be on this worksheet. It would pop up on the right side under my work. So double consciousness. Read the following paragraph and answer the questions that follow. Double consciousness describes the feeling that you have more than one social identity, which makes it difficult to develop a sense of self. It is a concept that W.E.B. Du Bois first introduced in his book, The Souls of Black Folk, which was written in 1903. Du Bois believed that African Americans lived in a society that was oppressive and devalued them as equals. At the same time, the African American culture encouraged equality and dignity. This type of double consciousness forced the race to view themselves from the perspective of both cultures, making it difficult for them to unify their African American subculture with their overall American identity. Du Bois believed this was damaging to how one's identity and self-esteem formed because of the negative perceptions and treatment of Caucasians. The internalization of such anti-Black sentiment from outside their subculture begins to shape their life experiences due to stereotypes perpetuated by mainstream culture. According to Du Bois, these prejudices encourage doubt, being self-critical, and being inhibited. So double consciousness, if you're thinking about it, is you think about yourself as a non-white person as two different things. So this is having more than one. So it's defined as having more than one social identity, and it's really like two. So there's this internal battle at all times. This is where it's really important, right? So Du Bois believed that African Americans lived in a society that was oppressive and devalued them as equals. So in America, in 1903, Du Bois wrote this article and said that American society sees African Americans as lesser than whites, and therefore American society cannot see African Americans as equals. But at the same time, African American culture encouraged equality and dignity. So we have this huge struggle, right? So on one hand, a Black person is American, but Americans don't see Black people as people in 1903. On the other hand, African American culture says that we are equals and we should be behaving with dignity and respect. So you're both being disrespected, but encouraged to be respectful at the same time. So it kind of creates this clash and a difficulty to kind of find where you fit. The same thing works with other people of color, other minority groups, because people both want to fit in with mainstream society, which ends up being white and middle class. And also embrace their own culture as well, which is not valued by mainstream America. So you kind of have this struggle where you're not sure who you are or where you fit because you don't really fit anywhere. So you're kind of just stuck in this limbo. So who came up with the term? W.E.B. Du Bois. What race was he? Obviously, we just talked about it a bunch. What race did he feel oppressed him and his race? So we know that he is African American. What race oppressed his race? What did the double consciousness damage? So we have this. Du Bois believed this was damaging to how one's identity and self-esteem formed because of the negative perceptions and treatment of Caucasians. So it really hurts your identity, so your sense of self, and your self-esteem. So you not only can't figure out who you are, you also feel really bad about yourself because you can't figure out who you are. It's very, very troublesome. Stereotypes really come into play because because people stereotype other people all the time and stereotype different cultures, and then that makes people of those cultures feel like they should maybe play into the stereotype to make other people feel comfortable. It's very weird. Okay, the last thing is, what did these prejudices encourage? Which is this last sentence. So these prejudices encourage doubt, being self-critical, and being inhibited. Inhibited meaning like you're prevented from doing what you want or behaving as you want. So there might be there are cultural differences between what mainstream America might want you to do and what your own cultural background wants you to do. That has everything to do with the language you speak, the way you dress, the food you eat. And mainstream America wants you to speak English. They want you to dress Western. They want you to eat American food. But your own personal culture dictates otherwise. Your own personal culture dictates you should speak Spanish, you should eat like Hispanic foods, you should eat what have you, and prevents you from, but mainstream America prevents you from doing that. So you feel both confused because you want to embrace your own culture, but you also want to be accepted in society. You're being pulled in two different directions. That's double consciousness. So the easiest way to explain this is a double consciousness can be more simply explained as the idea of having a public identity, so what you present to people in society, and a private identity, so what you do at home. So maybe when you're out in public, you always speak English. But when you're at home, you speak whatever language is native to your home life. Maybe you wear certain things when you're at home, or you're doing things on your own that you wouldn't wear out in public. Private and public. So you have a way, maybe you change the way you speak when you go out in public because you think it's going to make you more respectable. So that's kind of what we're going to do here. So the first thing we're going to do is watch the video below for an example from a recent film called Sorry to Bother You. Sorry to Bother You is a movie about a man who gets a telemarketer job, and he's a Black man, and his girlfriend is very much about embracing Black culture and being a Black woman, and she's artistic. She's super cool, and I love her. And so he's very influenced by that, while on the other hand, this situation at work happens where another Black man sitting next to him tells him that he should use his white voice to work as a telemarketer, that his white voice will get him more customers. So we're going to watch this. The questions are, both men who are speaking in the video are of what race? We can infer that the young man on the right has not had success in his job, and the older man on the left is giving him tips. What is the suggestion that the older man gives him? And then the last question is, in this video, which voice represents the older man's public self? Okay, so you should click on this. It's in my Google Drive, so it's going to pop up like this. Might take a minute. Okay, and then you're going to hit play. Hey, Youngblood. Creepy. I believe, so he does actually use the white voice, and it makes him very, very, very successful. And his girlfriend gets very upset about it because she feels like he's lying to himself. And I think his white voice is Seth Rogen. I think it's dubbed over by somebody else. Like, he's obviously not doing that. But okay, so both men who are speaking are of what race? Pretty straightforward. What is the suggestion, the tip, that the older man gives the younger man about how to make money and get ahead as a telemarketer? And then in this video, which voice, his own voice or the white voice, represents the older man's public self? So which part is his private self that he keeps to himself, that he uses when he's talking to other people in like normal circumstances, and which voice represents how he's speaking on the phone to customers to get them to buy things? All right, pause the video if you need to answer those questions. Click on the link if you need to go back and rewatch it. Okay, so then we're going to move forward. So these two clips that we're about to watch are from a TV show called Fresh Off the Boat. These experiences are real life things that happen to the writer. So it's really, 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 really funny, and I highly recommend watching the show. It takes place in the 90s, and the main character is super into rap. So he's into Tupac, he's into Biggie, like he's into all the rap. It's awesome. At one point, he meets a kid that's really into like Nirvana. It's amazing. But this TV show really follows the line of Jin's life, with Jin trying to kind of change himself. So we're going to talk about, so Eddie is the main character. He's the little boy that's into rap. What about Eddie's physical appearance is Americanized? So look at the way he dresses. Why does Eddie want white lunch? And then the last question is, how are Eddie Wong and Jin Wang similar in terms of their own double consciousness? So we'll talk about that last one. So we're going to look at this one. The first one is just him kind of introducing. This is the first part to the show. It's really good. Okay, so first question is, what about Eddie's physical appearance is Americanized? So he wears certain things, he listens to certain things. What about him is Americanized? I also want to point out the similarities between American-born Chinese and Fresh Off the Boat. Both kids, Eddie and Jin, both moved from a Chinatown. So in Fresh Off the Boat, Eddie is moving from Chinatown in DC, which is huge, not as big as San Francisco, where Jin is moving from. So they both move to these now, they're moving to these now white communities, very white, wealthier, such and so on. It's also pretty funny to point out that Eddie's dad is running a cowboy restaurant. Think like Longhorn Steakhouse. Like, he's running the most American kind of restaurant that you could possibly imagine. Very interesting. Okay, so you're going to answer the first question. We're going to watch the second clip.
Well, I haven't it about. This is where Lunchables live, Mom. If we get separated, try and join a white family. You will be safe there until I can find you.
So then they go in the store and they get like Lunchables and lunch meat and whatnot, and they pack sandwiches and stuff. But so for question number 2, why does Eddie want white lunch? So what about his school life is going so wrong that white lunch is supposed to fix? Okay, and then how are Eddie Huang and Jin Wang similar in terms of their own double consciousness? So the way that you can answer this is essentially by doing like Eddie Huang and Jin Wang, right? So they're double consciousness. So tell me, public self. What things about Eddie is he changing? So you can start with Jin because Jin might be a little easier. So what things did Jin change in the chapter about himself to try to make himself more acceptable to those around him? So I'll start you off. Changed his lunch to sandwiches. Eddie did the same thing. And then you can talk about like language. Talk about Jin doesn't really change his appearance. Jin will change his appearance later, but these are things that just consider the things that are similar between them. You can also talk about the things that might be a little different. So yeah, I trust you guys. I think you'll get it. It's pretty straightforward. So, okay, if you guys have any questions about any of this, let me know. This and the do now are the only two things you need to turn in. And then tomorrow we're going to be doing something called a Flipgrid. It's going to be very easy. I just kind of want you guys to play around with the app itself. Okay? All right. Goodbye, guys.